back to another episode of Develop, Integrate, and Sustain TV, keeping it simple. Today we're going to continue our discussion on thin computing, and we're going to talk about migration, operating system migration. So how can moving to a thin computing environment assist in migrating an operating system? Well, let's go ahead and take a look and see what kind of the different ways to do a migration are, and why going to thin makes so much sense. Alright, so let's start here with looking at a current state. Many of the environments that you may work in today look similar to this. Maybe a different operating system here, but essentially it's the same thing, right? We've got, whoops, that's the new machine, sorry about that. Current state, legacy machine. You've got all your data, your settings, your operating system, everything that resides here at the local desktop. It's very difficult to manage, and when migration time comes around, what do you have to do? Well, you got to move this data and these settings somewhere to a centralized area, blow down a new image. Let's say you're just doing an image refresh. Same applies to a new hardware refresh. So you got to blow down the image here, and then you got to return all the data and settings. Well, when you do that, you've got lots of time that you're going to have to go through to get that done. The new machine then, as said here, is going to have to receive its gold image. Let's say it's Vista, XP, 7, whatever it is, and all of those data and settings are going to have to be migrated onto that new machine. That means time down for the client, as well as time that's required by your IT shop to make that happen. Now, for smaller shops, this may not be that big of a deal, but let's look at it from another way as well. Consistency and security. So it's going to cost you in time, downtime, to perform this, as well as the consistency that you're going to get at the end. Now, there's one other consideration that you have to consider here, going especially to new operating systems and new hardware, are your peripheral devices. So when you're starting to migrate to these new operating systems, it may not be as stable with some of the drivers that they're offering. It's nice to know that if you migrated to Vista, for example, and the drivers didn't work, or 7 and the drivers don't work properly, that you can easily migrate back to XP just at the switch of a reboot, right? So you just reboot and go right back to your old image. So let me explain a little more about that. Thin computing enables all of these type of functions to occur. If your environment is concerned, also something to consider, if your environment is concerned about security and the security of your data at rest, a standard legacy FAT client where the data resides local is a problem to secure. You're going to have some form of encryption or something to secure what they call data at rest. Here in a thin computing environment, as you prepare for a thin computing environment, all of that data resides at a centralized location. Now granted, you're still going to have to secure your server environment, but it's much easier to secure a server environment in a data center that's locked, physically secure, than it's a lot easier to do that than to secure hundreds of clients that may be accessing data. So here in the server environment, you have your data and your settings. Also, you have your gold images that are delivered up to your client whenever they need it. So the new client itself in a thin computing environment, let's say you're migrating from Windows XP to Windows 7 and you're unsure about the drivers. Well, in a thin computing environment, what happens is you create yourself a Windows 7 version here and a Windows XP version here, and you begin the migration, and you're a little concerned that the XP driver is not going to work right. That the peripherals aren't going to work right in 7. Don't worry about that anymore. With a thin environment, you have an XP gold image and a 7 gold image. You boot this machine. If it boots great from the XP image, wonderful. If it has problems, just simply revert it back to the 7 image. You can literally, in a thin computing environment, have this machine have multiple operating systems. There could be a Linux system in here, whatever it is. Also, as you migrate for an operating system migration, once you migrate all of these data and settings up here the first time, now when you do your next refresh in 3 to 5 or 7 years, you don't have to do that again, and your migration costs will go down by about 75%. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, and have a great day.